Hi everyone. Welcome to week 5 of our English 200 course. Here I have the content tab open and I have the week 5 folder open as well. I'm going to go ahead and launch the unit and walk you through what we are doing in class this week. So this week we are going to start our work on the narrative essay, which is the first major project in this class. Congratulations, you have made it out of basic boot camp and are now ready to build upon your strong foundation and write. You should have all the knowledge and tools you need to really succeed. Your first of 3 writing assignments starts this week. We begin with the narrative essay, which is often a favorite of students and professors alike. In the narrative essay, you will write about a moment in time that impacted you greatly, especially in terms of you choosing the healthcare field or just a moment that impacted you greatly. I'll pause here to note that in this paper, you are not required to write about nursing or what made you decide to become a nurse. You're welcome to write about any impactful moment in your life. When we tell our stories, we become clearer about ourselves and also connect with other fellow human beings who have their own stories. Writing stories about ourselves usually feels good and cathartic. As Maya Angelou has famously said, there's no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. When we write in narrative form, the connections often seem to fall into place, and we almost always gain wisdom and appreciation for ourselves and others. This assignment really allows you to see your own story unfolding and examine the important events that brought you to where you are today, especially one particular moment in time where you became clear in terms of your destiny as someone who helps people heal and become well or comforts them when that is not possible. If you don't have one defining moment that shaped your life in terms of choosing the healthcare field, you may just write about a moment in time that impacted you greatly and changed you in any way. And I will also pause again to note this paper really wants you to focus on a specific event or a very specific moment in time. Where a lot of people end up losing points is they try to write about whole weeks, whole months of their life. They try to walk the reader through every single important decision that led them to become a nurse. And while those things have value, while those things are important and probably make for a very good story, that's not really the focus of this paper. You will be telling a single, fairly to the point story. All good narratives, or really we should say many good narratives, follow a basic plot structure as outlined in the diagram below, and have an emotional high point, otherwise known as a climax. This emotional high point allows the writer and the reader to really focus on something and therefore build up to it. What instance in time can you recall that really cemented your wanting to become a nurse or work helping others? In Chapter 5, our textbook is brimming with good ideas and examples of this popular genre, which you will interact with via our Connect, Learn Smart, Smart Book exercises this week, or in other words, the McGraw-Hill Connect assignments. Don't forget, we always follow the writing process, which we learned about earlier in the course. As a refresher, that means that you will do some pre-writing and planning first via our discussion forum, on which you will get feedback, and only then will you actually begin to work on your paper. Once you have your ideas mapped out, you will write your rough draft, which you might wish to share with a classmate, tutor, or professor, though you are not required to do so. Remember that we will accomplish our narrative in an academic essay format, so be sure to include an introduction, body paragraphs, and a conclusion, as we learned about last week. Our objectives for week 5, you're going to be identifying qualities of an effective narrative, you're going to create and share ideas for one's own narrative essay, and you're going to analyze and evaluate peers' ideas for their narratives. Here are readings and resources. We have an overview of the narrative essay video here that you can watch. We have the requirements for the narrative essay, the rubric that I will be using to grade that essay, an example of a narrative essay, as well as a planning template that you might find useful. Some additional resources for you. We have a plot diagram and narrative arc, which will give you some insight into writing a good story. We have a APA template, so you know how your document will need to be formatted, a style guide for APA, as well as a guide on writing academic essays. So a lot of really useful stuff here. I would make sure not to skip over these things, especially if you've never really written an academic essay before, or maybe it's been a really long time since you've done so. If you're not used to using APA format, if you've never really written a story before, I would not skip over these resources. Moving on to our activities and assessments, we have our fifth McGraw-Hill Connect module. This is due by 11:55 p.m. During week 5. If you have any questions about that, please let me know. But I'm guessing by this point in the course, you have a pretty good handle on how the McGraw-Hill modules work. And then this is actually, I noticed this earlier when I was reviewing the materials for week 5. I think this was put in here by accident. This is really nothing as far as I know. I think it's just some kind of broken link. I'm going to be contacting my classroom support, who are the people who handle the the electronic side of things. I'm going to be asking them to remove this so as not to confuse people. But if you're watching this video, you can just ignore this page for now. I'm going to work to get that removed. Now on to our discussion forum for this week, which is where you will be doing some pre-writing and planning for the narrative essay. Your initial post, as per usual, is due by 11:55 p.m. of week 5, and your 2 reply posts are due on Sunday. In this week's discussion forum, you will share the pre-writing and planning steps of the writing process that you have used to begin developing your narrative essay. If you are not sure about these steps and what they entail, revisit Chapter 2 of your textbook. For the narrative essay due next week, you will write a story in essay form about a moment in time that has impacted you greatly or changed you, especially in terms of choosing the healthcare field. In this discussion forum, we will do the pre-writing, get and write down ideas, and planning, organize those ideas into thesis statement and major stages for the narrative essay. Please see the organizational template for the narrative essay, as well as the plot structure diagram. They will help you organize your ideas for this planning. So I'm going to go over specifically what you need to do in this post, and then I'm going to review those documents with you. The documents are not, strictly speaking, necessary. There's not really anything you need to do with them. The main thing you need to do is answer these prompts, but these 2 documents are designed to help give you some insight into these pre-writing prompts here. But let's first look at what you need to post about. So you need to respond to all of these things. Please do so in this order. My recommendation is just copy and paste these questions right into your post to make sure that you are answering every single one. It also helps ensure that you are receiving full credit. If your answers are clearly numbered, that will help me identify that information faster than if I have to pick through just a big block of text and hope to find the things that I'm looking for. So try to number your responses. First of all, I want you to list as many ideas as you can come up with for things you might want to write about for this paper. Again, we're looking for specific, impactful moments of time, things that really changed you or shaped who you are. They do not need to be related to healthcare, although you are welcome to write about what made you want to become a nurse or what made you interested in healthcare. Next, which topic do you think you're going to choose to focus on and why? So you're going to start by just coming up with a bunch of ideas. Then you're going to pick one of those ideas. You're going to narrow it down. Then for number 3, identify what the climax or the emotional high point of your paper is going to be. Then come up with your thesis statement. The thesis statement is the main point of your story. That is, of all the things you're going to write about in your story, the thesis statement is the most important, or that's the main message, the main idea that you're going to try to get across. And then finally, briefly share what you will write about in each section. So tell me a little bit about what's going to be in your intro, what's going to be in your body paragraphs, and what's going to be in your conclusion. So that's what your initial post needs to do. And let's take a look at those documents. I'm going to drag this onto the screen here. So this is a template for organizing a narrative essay. You may find this useful. In your introduction, you're going to start with broad thoughts about the deep meaning of your narrative, and then gently lead the reader into the paper. Then you're going to segue or link this to your life, your story, your point, your meaning, your thesis statement. And at the end of the introductory paragraph, you're going to put your thesis. So you notice here we kind of have this this triangle here that's pointing downwards. It gets narrower as it goes down. That's generally what you want to do in an introduction. You start kind of broad, and then as you move through the intro, you become more specific until you reach the thesis statement, which is the most specific point of your paper. From there, body paragraph 1, you might consider writing about the exposition, your rising action. If you're not familiar with those terms, we'll look at those in a second. So talk about your life before the event and give the reader details leading up to the main event. Body paragraph 2 is probably going to contain your climax. That is the main moment in time, and then maybe right after that moment. So like the big thing that changed, the most important conversation that you had, the event that, shaped who you are, the thing that really shook everything up, the turning point for you. There's lots of different ways you can think about it, but the emotional high point of the story will probably come in body paragraph 2. Body paragraph 3, likely going to be your falling action in resolution. What happened into the future? What was the wisdom that you gleaned from that situation? You can reflect a little bit on your climax. In your conclusion, you're probably going to restate your thesis statement, but reword it, and then leave the reader with something to think about, the significance of your story, how it might impact them or how it might impact the world. What are lessons or takeaways that the reader might glean from your story. I will also say, so this is the format for a basic 5-paragraph essay. You're welcome to write a 5-paragraph essay. You are also not confined to this. If for instance you want to have 4 or 5 or 6 body paragraphs, that is totally fine. This is just a basic format for you to follow. Now let's take a look at the plot diagram. This is something you maybe would have encountered in like high school or maybe even like middle school. A lot of narratives follow this format. You begin with an introduction, which often is called an exposition. That's where you kind of establish the setting. You might introduce the characters. Maybe establish kind of what the tone of the story is going to be. The rising action is like all the stuff that builds up to the climax, which is kind of the main event or the high point, or the turning point. So rising action, that gets us from the beginning of the story to the high point, just all the things in between. Falling action, that's the stuff right after the climax. What happened afterwards? How did you feel? Where did things go from there? How did things tie up? And then finally, your resolution or your conclusion, which is where you bring the story to a satisfying ending. We have some brief explanations of these various elements here that you're welcome to read through. But you'll see some of these terms in the resources and readings for this week. You may also hear me use some of these terms as well. They're just common terms when it comes to developing a story. All right. Now for your reply posts, remember that you need to reply to at least 2 of your peers. Also make sure that you get these replies in on time. Reply posts cannot be accepted late. They have to be turned in by 11:55 p.m. on Sunday at the absolute latest. And I give you some guidance here on what you should say in response to your peers. I think this is pretty straightforward, so I'll let you read this on your own. And that is all for this week. If you have any questions or concerns, please let me know. I would be happy to help you out.